It is Friday. It is Friday. Did you watch Forrest Gump today? You know, Brainrot. I'm just updating the channel description and all that. Got some echo on the hot mic. Let me see. Oh, I know what that is. Oh, you know where that mic echo's coming from? 1 second. I wonder if that fixes the echo. Yeah, it sounds like it did. I have like a whole new like mic setup and yeah. So I have this um it's called like a beacon. It like lets you do uh like basically like every app can be its own channel. And it was putting my mic through my headphones, which is what's being sent to the audience mix. While we have a bit of time. One. Yes, one. Whoa, welcome, Rebecca Black. I've seen the boiler room sets that Rebecca Black was doing. Her new stuff. Yeah, yeah, your new stuff is legit good. I think yeah. Well, like there was this like really famous like um you know this, but for the people that don't know this in the audience, Rebecca Black used to work with like this really famous like music guy who would like try to place uh like her music, and he placed someone else's music too, and like that was this guy's entire job, and everyone was like pissed at him because they were like, "What is this guy and who are his connections?" If you look at the Friday video, that that scene where he's like, uh, no, it wasn't that scene where like Rebecca Black is coming out of the house and jumps in the, that's he says like riding in the back seat, and then you look and there's like a black dude in the back seat of the car. That's the guy who, and he like weaseled his way, yeah, her Lambo, exactly, like this guy had weaseled his way into the music video and stuff. Yeah, super creepy dude, exactly. All right, I think we'll get started in a second. Yeah, and the guy was like 30 something years old. Let me see if I can find it. Well, we have a couple of minutes, right? God, you're so young in this. We have competing music. Not this one. Where is it? This guy. This guy. This guy. Because he had like all the connections with like the music people. Because I'm pretty sure, like, yeah, going to the club with his 15-year-old friends. Yeah, no Diddy. Um, yeah, super weird, super sus. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that, yeah, I'm pretty sure the Rebecca Black, like, the reaction emotes of Rebecca Black. We should fix the reaction emotes. We have like some NSA ones for that we use on this channel, but we should rethink them. Yeah, I don't know this. I don't know this icon pack, but it's good. Switch global emotes. Okay, let me just share this. Yeah, because it was like, yeah, my, my partner saying Rebecca Black had a mental breakdown because of all the mockery she received. And the company that made the music video got sued for exploiting families. I totally believe that. 100%. All right, let me see if. Where are we at? Oh, sorry, Chad. I'm just trying to figure out if we have everyone I was expecting to come watch. And creator deck. Okay, cool. Um, cool. I'm just waiting on Ollie. They'll be here in a bit. Do you want to live stream eating pasta? My friend was asking if I should get some pasta. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to that. Actually, I'm pretty hungry. Okay, so let's talk about brain rot or brain dump. So, like, the entire premise we've had about this, trying to log the entire premise of like this idea is that like Lucy Parsons Labs has a ton of people who know a lot about a lot of different things. So some of our friends are like really into synthesizers and really into like making art, and like we're all like super nerds. But I figured, it would be fun to do a little like brain dump on something that someone knows a ton about. And so um yeah, that's kind of how this like idea came to be for the Twitch channel of the week. I don't know how often we'll do these, but you figured it'd be a fun thing to do on a Friday night. So before we get started on this topic, I do want to warn you. Let me see, does this work? Yeah. Are you okay? And have you taken care of your mind and your body? The reason I say that is because um I want to talk about this. Obviously, that is a mechanical keyboard, and I've sometimes find myself like deep into the archives of like what kind of keyboard do I want, and I'm like, okay, no, um, I don't actually want a mechanical keyboard. I need to leave the house for the first time in like 3 days. But the reason this like idea came about was because I was talking to my colleague, two of them actually, and they were like, "Hey, Freddie, what kind of keyboard should I get?" And I was like, I don't really know how to answer that question because it's like, um, thank you. It's like asking like, what kind of shoes should I buy? Um, it's a very subjective, like question, and it's like, well, what are you trying to do, and what do you like in your shoes, right? Do you need running shoes? Do you want athletic shoes? Are you going hiking? Are you gonna go on a walk? Do you want socks? Do you want cowboy boots? Like it's hard to say. So before we like dive into the world of mechanical keyboards, like I love mechanical keyboards. There's just so much variety and creativity in them. I mean, the people have like meetups. This is a photo from one of the meetups. Uh, you can do a lot with them. But there's a lot to do. I mean, the reason I like them is that like non-mechanical keyboards are like cheap. Most of them use what's called like a membrane style. I'll show you a picture of that. And then they're also like high shrimp fantasy. Um, welcome and welcome redact yourself. And like they're also like not customizable. I mean, and they just like don't look as cool. There's a lot I like about them, but I mean, this looks way better than like this. This is a membrane style keyboard. This is probably what most people are used to using like at like an office. So what happens is that like you push, I guess, up right on this keycap, and then it pushes the membrane, and then it'll squish the membrane, and then that squishing will cause the PCB, the electronic components underneath it, to complete the circuit, right? So you click W, um, you push the membrane, and then that'll complete the circuit, and the computer recognizes it. Um, there's a lot, and the reason people use membrane style keyboards is that like back in the day when mechanical keyboard, well, when computers were first being developed, they were really expensive products, obviously, um, and sort of more or less during the 90s, during like the mass adaptation of PCs as like a personal computer, right? The PC itself. Um, this was a way of turning out like lots of keyboards cheaply. Um, that's not really the case anymore, but so some of the advantages, like this is a membrane style keyboard, this is a mechanical keyboard, and there's a lot of advantages of them. The one that I think sticks out to most people is that they're customizable. Like that is a really big thing. You can see some of the colors here. um, they're a lot more durable. I gave Shrimp Fantasy, who I think it's, if that's who I think it is. I gave them like a keyboard of mine that like I had for like a decade, and it still works. I mean, people test like the switches in mechanical keyboards for like 100,000 uses or something like that, and uh. So they're very, very durable. And the other thing is that they're very serviceable, which means that like if the switches themselves break, you can replace them easier. Um, they're very I mean, most people think about them as like the haptic and audible feedback. I don't know if I do. Like, yeah, whoop, whoop. I don't know what I just did. But I don't know what that was. Something in Canva. But people like you can hear the clickiness of keyboards, and that's what most people associate with mechanical keyboards. Another reason I like the mechanical keyboard is because of like you can use it in scenarios that are like in different languages. So like it's fairly straightforward. It's sometimes a lot easier to like switch languages with a mechanical keyboard than it would be to like get a new keyboard if I'm gonna like type into like Mandarin or something like that. There are like obviously language standards for keyboards, and you can switch between them easily. I don't know if y'all will be able to see this, but on the back of my keyboard, let's see if we can do this. I might need to move the camera 1 second. Oh, what? We went way too far. Okay, the back of my keyboard, you can see like those little switches in there, the white switches. That's better. So I'm on a Windows PC, um, but if I were like to be switched to a Mac, um, the Windows key and the Mac option keys are sort of flipped and reversed, and then you can just like hit this like the switch, those white switches, and then like you're you're fine in it. You don't have to think about it. Um, there's a lot of interchangeability. So like basically like everything from the case to, well, basically just about everything can get replaced at some point. Um, and then there's a lot of form factors and macros, and a lot of keyboards are now programmable. So what that means is like, let's say I'm using Photoshop, right? And I have the um, I don't know, the 7 key, right? To copy and paste. Like I could just hit 7 over and over again when I'm in Photoshop, and then when I close Photoshop, that 7 just becomes the number 7 again. Or I'm in not in Photoshop, but this time I'm in Spotify, and 7 could become my skip key. Um, so like skip song, right, or pause or whatever it is. And so like the keyboard would have different functions based on the programs that are open, and like that kind of programmable feature happens in keyboards that just you couldn't really do with a mechanical keyboard, like a membrane style keyboard. um and you can do, imagine like all sorts of macros you can do. Like people who play video games a lot, sometimes they'll do like complicated maneuvers or the same maneuver over and over again, and they'll program it so that they don't have to like do it a lot. So the other thing, the reason people like membrane style keyboards is because they're cheap to produce. And for the longest time, mechanical keyboards were far more expensive. That actually has changed programmatical. Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. Uh, that's actually changed over the last year. However, you can go from like a $50 mechanical keyboard all the way to like hundreds or thousands of dollars. Um, like $3,000. I think the most expensive keyboard that's been produced for like some video game guy. So anyway, uh, there's all of these things that happen with programmable keyboard or with mechanical keyboards, and this is why kind of they're preferred. In 1985, the Model M was introduced by IBM. It uses a kind of what's called a buckling spring switch. Um, this is like one of the most popular mechanical keyboards of all. One of the first kind of like ones that kind of had a cult following. Um, I'm not a big fan of this keyboard, but I know a lot of people who think that that's the best keyboard ever made. There are things that I don't like about it. For example, if you can see that there's no like Windows key, for example, um, that's missing, and I think that I like having a Windows key. Okay. The other thing I don't like about this keyboard is if you can kind of see, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. Yeah. You see this enter key? Can you see that? Like you see how the enter key is sorry, it's like that tall and like it has a little bit of a unit, a little extension there, which means that if you look down on your keyboard, you probably have a backslash there on most keyboards. I prefer having that little like backslash there. I don't like it when the enter key or the return key is like that big. And so yeah, so again, they're just yeah, the little boot. Thank you. There's other things that some people like, some people dislike. I mean, this was built for most like at that time, computers were mostly like office equipment, and most people didn't have a personal computer of any kind, and at that time it was a lot of data entry type things, right? So like the full key, the full number pad, right? That's on the right hand side, um, with the enter key plus and minus. Like that is a feature that most people don't do that amount of data entry that they need a full size number pad. Yeah. So actually, with some, so a lot of people will now buy mechanical keyboards that don't have that sort of, it's just cut in half or that part's cut off. And there are even options to have like they call them hot swappable number pad, where you can just like sort of like slide in a number pad as necessary, and then if you don't need it, you can take it off and then just throw it on your desk or whatever. So yeah, so but some people to this day will say that was the best keyboard ever made. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's special, but again, this is all subjective. Like nothing is real, as Kierkegaard has taught us. It's all subjective. See, and say like Big Facts says Model M is the goat. I disagree, but you know, and I know people that have like OG Model M's, and they still work. So I mean, they might be the goat. What's the history behind why number pads are reversed from phone pads? Are they? I have no idea. I really have no idea. Oh yes. Okay. We'll do some history search. I'm learning something new. Okay, so moving on. Form factors. Okay, so when you look at a mechanical keyboard, top left is a 1 on a phone. I guess you're right. I have no idea. So form factors means a lot of different things. I will do this. Okay, so form factor. This is like when we think of a keyboard, you know, this is kind of what most people think of, right? Or maybe it's easier if I do it this way. Yeah, right. You know, a space bar that's about that wide, Windows key, number pad, function keys, um, whatever. So this is kind of what most people think of, but there's many different types of form factors. For example, this one is like a 105. This is considered like a full factor. But as I talked about earlier, this is an enter key that it doesn't have the little boot like the Model M did. Um, so like a form factor would have like a might say a set of number of keys, and then you would say like that's this form factor. So if you're looking on the screen where it says ESO, yeah, you see this ESO standard. Those are like international standards. Return key is actually bigger, and that like on the right hand side, the return key sort of excludes a backslash. So the number of keys are you'll see like super often like the number of keys that will tell you. You might see a keyboard and it just says like 105, and you're like, what does that mean? It means that it's a full-size keyboard where the return key does not cut off that backspace. But then you might see 104 and you're like, what is that? So like you have to just like look at the caps locks and the shifts and to see like, or the Windows keys to see if they're all there. There are also like international standards, like English language keyboards in the US are different than UK British keyboards. What's up, gamers? What's up, Dos and Davos? So like British style English keyboards are different than US keyboards, although like most places will sell both, like the US one will work in the UK. But for like non-Latin languages like Russian, for example, which uses you would see a different standard. So sometimes you might see like the international standard, the ISO standard, or the ANSI standard that describes like the keyboard layout, and then that would tell you how many keys there are. And then the other thing that like happens with the form factors is that now there are so many different types of keyboards. Like you might see, you often see now like RGB keyboards, which I know Dos Centavos has a RGB keyboard. I really strongly dislike RGB keyboards because I'm not like a 15-year-old gamer. I'm a 37-year-old gamer. But you know, that's why you see a lot of RGB. You also see like sometimes you'll see like a big dial where like the keyboard dial will like let you turn up or down the like system volume, right? So it'll turn down all of your music, all of your whatever, YouTube. It'll turn down everything, and then you can turn it back up. You can also see like pause or skip music. You see things that are USB. You see form factors that are Bluetooth or wireless. There are wireless ones that like use Bluetooth and are battery powered. And then there are like wireless means sometimes Bluetooth, but sometimes they use a different standard that's not Bluetooth for the wirelessness. So anyway, there's a lot of different form factors, and so these like just something to be aware of. It doesn't matter so much in the US, but definitely if you're like trying to localize or use different form factors, or think about like how many keys do you want. Yeah, Bluetooth versus 2.4 gigahertz. Yes, I think so. But anyway, so the point that I'm making is that like you might hear about or see like the number of keys. The standards matter, and there's a few of them, and it's really, really confusing. The other thing I wanted to say about form factors is that you might see this like percentage system, which I actually really hate. Like the keyboard that I have now is probably closer to an 80%. The Model M was not like 100% keyboard, and it's kind of hard to see, but like in the example that I have where it's the 80%, I don't have a number pad or the keys above them, which would be on the right hand side. Hold on, I think I'm doing that right. On the right hand side. And then other keyboards would have like an escape key cut off or a function keys cut off. um, and they, you might not even have like some gamers will have like the arrow keys won't be there, and you'll use WASD as the arrow keys. When you see like 40% or 50 or 60 or those form factors can get pretty small, which means that you can like take it out, you can put it in your backpack and go to the library. um and the reason I hate this percentage system is like to go back to this like number of keys discussion and internationalization, is that I think it's more useful to be like to like look at the keyboard and see like, oh, it's 105 and not 104, which means that the return is present, and it's sort of the size that is considered more or less standard, which is doesn't have the boot. um and then it is to like be like, oh, it's 65%. And you'll see this a lot where you might have to say like, oh, it's 65%, and let me go check which standard it's using. I think this percentage system is confusing. The only place I think people should really be using it um is to is like if you're like traveling, right? Or if you're like, I want a mechanical keyboard that I'm going to take with me. um like that's, I think, where it's okay to be using these this like 40, 50, 60% what. And then you also have like form factors that include like what is the actual keyboard made out of. Most of them, this one that I have here is made out of plastic, sometimes with like an aluminum inner shell. um then there are some that are made out of completely 100% aluminum. Then there are some that have padding on the inside. Then there are like, then there are some that, if you can see the feet that I have, some mechanical keyboards don't have feet. And you can see like where your uh, preference for customization comes in. So there's a lot of that can go into the form factors. Um, and for me, I think what's just most useful is to like know that there are the numbers that correspond to like standards, and and what goes into the like actual case, whether it's plastic or aluminum or there's padding or whatever it is. That can always get dealt with later. Like, it wouldn't be hard to take the case off of this thing and replace it into a different case, if I wanted to. Like, I got sick of the black, I want to put it gray. That's not like such a big deal. Let me take a see here. Okay, cool. Also, when people think about mechanical keyboards, this is usually what they think of, which is like the keycap sets. The keycaps correspond to like literally like that's the thing that you're hitting, right? And keycap sets have gotten really like um really diverse. Like, I mean, they've always been kind of diverse-ish, um, but they've gotten really, really diverse over the last, like, I would say, decade. So you can see all kinds of sets and themes, duck-shaped ones, and you know, duck-shaped ones, and some that are Mario themed, and these are like black and red. Mine are just sort of basic grays and blues. When I first was getting started, I really wanted to have a black and red keyboard, and only WASD keyboards sold the model that I wanted, so that's why I got that company. And then so like when I gave mine away to Shrimp Fantasy, like I noticed just like how different and how many options, or many more options there are. I will say that like with keycaps, there are basically like two types. Um, uh, ABS and PBT. They're both plastic, but they're like slightly different types of plastics. One is slightly better than the other. that doesn't matter so much. But there are also people making keycaps out of wood and ceramic and aluminum and all of these other things. One thing to know about the keycaps is that they have profiles, and most of them are about the same for the most part. Like you can see this profile here, and the profiles generally are the same. So you see like cherry as the most common profile. Um, and what that means is that like any cherry keycaps will fit on any cherry keyboard for them almost universally, except for uh like the rows. So like the rows matter. So like the tab has to go on the tab, um on the, you know, on the second row. So you'll see like the rows do change a little bit. Um uh and then but there are other kinds of profiles too. um you know, there are people who make keycaps for like people who have really long nails and want to punch keys but like don't want to break their nails, so the profile will be different. So you'll see that sometimes. um and so, but like for the most part, people make cherry keycaps and they're mostly interchangeable. So if you like just want to change the look of your keyboard, it's really easy, and then you'll just buy a set and you'll just yeah, you'll just buy it'll come like this in like a little plastic container, and then you just it'll come with like a key puller, and you just pull the key out and then just push it back in. um Big Fact says, I've heard bad things about ceramic keyboards, but they sound so they look so cool. They look cool. My beef with keycaps and mechanical keyboards in general is that people are always like, how do they sound? And I don't think that tells you anything. Uh so I don't really like ceramic, but also like I think it's like at that point it's like, are you spending money because you just like want them, or you really, I don't know. At that point it becomes personal preference, so I don't really like try to get too into it. Thank you, Dos Centavos, for the gifted sub, by the way. The other thing to know about the keys is that they do have units. And it's a little bit hard to explain the units, but on this green keyboard, it's like you see the left shift key, I guess would be, well, you guys can't see, y'all can't see that, but like on the left shift key, you can see that that one is full size. But the one to the right, on the right side under the arrow key or the enter key by the arrow keys, that one is like 0.07 units. They're just called units. I don't know. They're just called units. Like the usually the space bar is the biggest, obviously, like it's 2.75 units. It's not, and so like, yeah, you'll see like just they're called units, and you might see like a keycap would just say like 1 unit or whatever. Units exist, and that's a thing to be aware of. So they're mostly interchangeable, just FYI. But there are standards, and they all use this standard unit of unit. Sound. Okay, so the complaint about mechanical keyboards is usually about the clickiness of the sound. Just be aware that like keyboards have these like gaskets, which you can see. Those are the red things in the top right. So you can like add dampening. You can add all sorts of things into the keyboard to make it quieter. You can affect the travel of like the stabilizers, which stabilizers are these like metal pieces, which are usually for the bigger keys to stabilize them. You can add lubrication to the keyboard. You can do all sorts of things to it. But a lot of the complaint that people have about mechanical keyboards is the tactile like noise that they make. Doesn't bother me, but I used to work in an operations center where like literally every time we were on a voice bridge, they would be like, "Hey, can the sock please mute?" Because everyone had mechanical keyboards, and it would be like 8 of us responding to an incident, and it's just clack 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 clack. Clack. They used to hate that, but um, okay. The thing. Oh yeah, and by the way, if you guys, if y'all don't know Hippo Tech, I think that's how it's pronounced. Hippo. I think it's Hippo. Um, they make a lot of content about like different keyboard types, and my one beef with a lot of the keyboard content creators is just that they all talk about how it sounds or how it feels, which doesn't really translate well to be like, should I buy this? um I do like how Micro Center has like keyboards out that you can play with a little bit. That's my preference, and this is actually kind of how this all came out to be. But Hippo Tech has a really good channel. There's another woman, I think she's an Asian woman, who also has a really good channel. You'll find her right away um, if you just search mechanical keyboards on YouTube. But um, just check out some of that content if you're interested. But yeah. Okay, so switches. This is the stuff that like people uh think about the most. This is a switch from this is a buckling spring from IBM Model M. Um, and switches are what people think about when they think about the mechanical keyboard. They think about the click, and they think of, and the switches are what makes it durable. Um, so uh, let's see. Yeah, so like, they have these like things that are switch testers, and you can go. I think Micro Center probably has a few of these out, and you can go and see like which ones, and you can hear them, and then you can feel the difference. Um, I think this is more useful than this, right? This is way more useful to me than this in terms of like, I know what I like. Um, but this doesn't mean very much to most people. So I do want to break it down a little bit. This might get a little bit technical. You probably want to just look at this. What are channel points? I'm not much of a Twitcher. I'll tell you about the channel points in a second, but this might get a little bit technical. So I will do my best to both not be technical, but this is, I think, important. Give me 1 second. I need my props. Channel, so like Twitch channels or channel points. Like the more you watch a Twitch channel, the more you have like these channel points, and you can like the person who's making content can do different things. Like I can have people redeem points for me to shave my head or whatever it is. Anyway, so switches. This is the part that gets really confusing and kind of technical. But like if we were to go to visit the lab, I think this is like how I like to think about switches. And so so let me get out of this and let me go to draw mode. Here we go. Okay, I'm gonna draw like, okay, so I'm gonna attach like a string, and I'm gonna do like a, I don't know, a ball. And I'm gonna put a little stick here, just a stick. And in fact, I'll do this with my I have a little iPhone charger. This is gonna be our ball. Let's see if we can do this. Can we show this on my desk? Can you see the edge of my desk? Oh, that's just the crotch shot. There you go. So if you have like an iPhone cable like this, right? And I was to drop it on the edge of a table, what would happen as I'm dropping it is like kind of like it'll balance on here for a little bit, and then it'll flip, right? And the same thing is sort of happening if I were to take this ball that's up here and like slowly lower this piece of string to, let me mark this as a stick. Okay. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna like lower this string, and then at some point it'll be stuck on here. Ball. Oh, maybe I'll do it over here. And then at some point it'll slip, and then it'll continue traveling forward. Does that kind of make sense? Right? Like I'm lowering my iPhone or my phone charger on my desk, and at some point you see like the one. You see like the cable sort of starts, you know, I have it here, I'm lowering. And then at some point the cable's gonna go get a little bit loose, and at that point it's gonna like slip, and then it's gonna go on. And it's like, why am I telling you about this in the physics lab? Why are we in a physics lab in the first place? Go back to my presentation. Because there's two things that are happening. One, there's this motion up and down, and then there's a force that's being applied by the string. Force is a vector given by, so okay. So what happens with switches is that the force that's applied in them, which is like what you feel when you're pressing the key, depends on this motion, and then like this string constant that we call K, which is like how stiff the spring feels, and how far you're traveling. So there's this force that's being applied, and it also depends on how far you're depressing the spring. So let me show you a keyboard switch, so we're not even more confused. Chat. There we go. So this is like a very common switch. It's Cherry MX, and Cherry MX Black, and it does a motion that's very similar to, sorry, hold on, this. So you can see on the right side where my cursor is, you see how the switch has a straight profile on the left hand side. That means that as it's moving through its actuation point, which would be sort of the table in my example, there's no sort of slippage, right? It just moves straight up and down. It just moves straight up and down without any kind of impact of the spring and that slippage force. So what happens in that scenario is that you have a very linear motion. So you press the key, and then it stops, and then you let it go, and you don't feel a force differential, which is not the case for other types of switches like this. Let me use the brown one. Now the brown one has a different force profile. This thing here, this that I think is useful to look at. These profiles tell you about how it feels as you're pressing down. And with the brown one, it has this kind of like bump on this side, and that's where the slippage comes from. And so what will happen is as you're pressing down, you'll feel this bump. These bumps are interacting with each other, and then at some point it'll slip, and then it'll continue moving on. And you'll see that in these force profiles. Uh, you see what they call it the tactile point, which is really like the point where um, you're pressing down on the keyboard. You'll feel pressure, but it won't actually click or register the key, like the depression, until it goes through that tactile point, and then it all goes, and then you bottom out, and then I hit the keyboard bottoming out, and then you release it, and then it comes back. So these force profiles depend both on like the shape of the key of the switch. In this case, does it have this like little red linear thing? Does it have these bumps in them? And that will give it a different sound, and that'll give it a different feel. And there's another thing that really matters here, and that's how far it's traveling. These like switches, animations are not to scale, but some switches travel really, really like shallow, and some of them travel much further. And so these, the force profiles might be look the same, but then you're sort of traveling further. So in this example, we have MX blacks, which travel further than MX reds. And MX Reds are really popular with gamers because what they want is quick reaction times. They want to press a key and know that it's been actuated and that the game has registered their movement or whatever it is. Um, so, uh, so you might see a very similar force profile, but it actually would be, instead of being, 40 and instead of doing it like this, it might be higher up or actually closer together. And so those force profiles tell you a lot about how that switch will function and over what distances. So like these distances that they're moving and actuating and bumping create these force profiles. And like let's say I really like the blue ones, but I type a lot and I don't want to have to travel my fingers as far, but I like how much pressure I'm adding. Then I might look for a force profile that looks similar, but then the tactile point would be maybe lower, you know? Um, so if you feel that you like a switch, you might want to look for similar force profiles to find other switches that are like them. And you'll see like different shapes, right? So in this case, a tactile point would be where does that click come in and when does it actually like, jump? But and so then that's kind of how you would start making these comparisons. Does that kind of make sense? I'll pause there because it's kind of confusing. I'll eat some. I'll eat some pasta while we. Oh, yeah. Any questions? Any questions in the disc? Doesn't tell us. Can you tell me, are there questions in Discord or in the Slack? I'll mute for 1 second. Sorry, I was muted. Um, I just got like 6 messages saying I was muted. Sorry about that. Okay, so I did talk about switches a little bit here, and there are three sort of main types. It's just like the linear, the tactile, and the clicky. The linear ones are like this that I kind of already talked about. That they don't have this audible click as you're moving. They just kind of just move up and down. Then there are the ones that do have this audible click, or this, sorry, they have this point, this the slippage point, the tactile point, and when you press it, you feel your finger go through the tactile point and continue on. But they don't give off an audible click as much as like the click keys do. And then the clicky ones are the ones that are kind of more known for the as the more traditional mechanical keyboards um, that do give off a large audio click. I will say one thing: people sort of do confuse mechanical keyboards with like clicky keys, and that's not the same. There are different types of mechanical keys. There are like optical mechanical switches. There are some that are called like Hall mechanical keys. They all kind of function on slightly different principles. But there are three types, one of which is clicky, which is most people think of. I prefer the tactile one because I like to feel it. But linear ones are, I would say like linear and clicky are probably like the most popular. Linear because gamers prefer that sort of rapid response, which is why they like those. But to put it all together is like the force and the travel, these sort of create these profiles that set each type of switch apart from each other. And usually the way that those are differentiated is by a color. Like, so this is a blue, this flavor, this profile is, this one's a black, even though the animation is of a red one. Please ignore that. There's a brown, and this is usually like how people differentiate keys. And you'll hear people talk about, oh, I have a mechanical keyboard, I got some cherry greens, I got this manufacturer, I got that manufacturer. But usually people talk about the color, and that is usually where people have really strong preferences. And the colors and the travel, so like is the force applied to the key plus how far they travel? Like the color, more or less yes, uh, and more or less no. It's sort of complicated. Yes and no. Usually, what happens with manufacturers, I gotta move my face 1 second. There we go. Is like manufacturers, like so Cherry MX, manufacturers. There's a company called Cherry MX that makes Cherry MX. Then there are manufacturers that also make Cherry MX switches, which are like blues or reds or greens or clears, and they will usually like on their specs have that they're manufactured to certain tolerances. So like a Cherry MX blue, whether or not it's made by the Cherry MX company, should feel the same way or roughly feel the same way as just a greens. Greens universally would feel about the same way within certain tolerances. Regulate the switch industry. Actually, unironically, yes. Then there are other types of switches, and I'll pause here and I'll say the mechanical keyboard industry has exploded in popularity in the last probably like 7 years. And so now you see all of these like types of switches that like it's hard to keep up with. Like Rebecca Black said, Topher switches were best switches. They're actually a completely different design than like the Cherry ones are, and they have more of a cylindrical spring on the on the inside, and they just feel different. There are Gateron switches, which also make very similar Switch feels in terms of like force profile than Cherry does, but they're not the same. So like Gateron blues would feel similar to Cherry blues, but they're not going to feel the same way that a Cherry blue made by Cherry MX would feel close to a regular blue that is still like the Cherry MX tolerance. So it's all kind of super confusing, which is why I don't think it's useful to be like, I like greens. I think it's more useful to be like, I like Gateron greens. And now we're seeing like, because this industry has exploded so much, you hear and see all of these flavor profiles like that, like I've never heard of. I mean, I saw one today that was like milky yellows. I was like, what is a Gateron milky yellow, and what does that force profile look like compared to this one here in the top left? This one is avocado. I don't know what that means. Um, then there's like creamy and cherry banana and matcha rose gold. Is that like a red? There's like rose now, and I don't know what those profiles look like. Are Gatorons kind of like knockoff cherries? They're supposed to feel a bit smoother, is what I've heard, and that's really like the only difference. But I think again that feels like so subjective. But I don't know which one tastes the best. I don't know. Probably milky yellow, if I'm being honest, or matcha banana. And then there are also like ceramic ones. Like I've seen like ceramic banana. I don't, it's really hard to come up with that. So that's kind of like what the switches are and why there's so much sort of divisiveness about like how do they feel and which ones do I use. I think um I think what's useful, this is why I find this to be way more useful than the colors, or why I use the force profiles to sort of dictate like which ones I will like. Because if you showed, I don't know what the avocado force profile looks like, but if you showed me that compared to like a brown or a clear or a red, I would tell you like right away, like I don't like this, or I will not like this as much as I would like a blue or avocado or whatever it is. Like, I think I might have. Okay, and then there's one thing else that I just wanted to talk about switches. I mean, stuff that's really popular. I think the tactile and clicky are just most popular for typing, um, because that little like audible bump, like you can put your rest your keys and not hit the key. um Reds and blacks are super popular for gaming, like I kind of mentioned. What? I don't know why that happened. I don't know what that was that a mic? Oh, I hit the M key. uh so there are some that are just like popular: blues, browns, reds, clears, uh and then there's all these other ones, but there are some that are more popular than others. I will say that one thing that I didn't talk about at all was like which manufacturers people like. Oh, sorry, let me move my face over. There we go. So manufacturers, there's a ton of manufacturers for mechanical keyboards now. Um, it's really hard to recommend or say like one is good or one is bad. Um, I don't like the gaming keyboard companies like what is it? Uh, like Razer, for example. I like their mice, but I don't like their keyboards. Yeah, Razer, exactly. Um, I think the keyboards themselves have gotten really good, and I think like what you should look for is like a switch type that you like, and like a form factor that you like. Um, so like go to Micro Center and just like literally sit there for like 10 minutes and just type on everything and say like I like this one, I like that one. The form factor really matters. They now make now this has been there are like also like kits that people sell where you can say like I want this kind of form factor plus this kind of keycap plus this kind of switch, and you can like put it together yourself in a weekend. They also make like these switches that are like hot swappable. So like this back here. So like you can see like the I don't know if you can see this. You could see like the mechanical or the electric leads here in the avocado by the three, this little copperish thing. So you can like literally pull the switch out, and if you don't like you were using blues, but now you want to like switch to clears, you could just like literally pull the clears and drop in the blues, or you know I want a clear space bar, but you know a stiffer. You know this is another thing that people do. Like maybe you know your like if you look at a keyboard, right? Like my tab is blue, but like let's say I wanted to make that heavier, right? Then the Q and F and G or whatever, and then you could have a different weight or like make the stiff springer or stiff springer the spring stiffer. um yeah, so you can do like all sorts of things. So people do like these like hot swappable keyboards, or hot swappable like basically they'll sell you like the electric PCB, the electronic component part of it, and then you can swap in and out the actual switches. Um, obviously you can always change the keycaps, um, but I really didn't like to talk about the manufacturers because one, there's a few that like I I think are universally well liked, like Shran. I can never pronounce that. Kishran. Um, Keychron, is it? Like their keyboards are super popular. They have a ton of varieties. The ones that I like are Leopold. WASD was like the one keyboard company that had like colors that I could customize when I was buying a keyboard for the first time, like a mechanical keyboard for the first time, where I like um I didn't want to look for keycaps. I wanted to like buy it with like uh with specific look. Um, and so I like them quite a bit. I've had a few of their keyboards. I've bought like I think two or three now. Das keyboard is really well liked. They're way more on the expensive side. IBM has good keyboards. I don't think it's useful to talk about the manufacturers, just to say like um uh I just don't like the gaming ones. They're not as good. Um, so I mean that's kind of I think it for some of the stuff that I wanted to talk about. I guess yeah, just finally like these things are where it's at. This is where it's at. The force profiles. Um, and like looking at these and comparing them. This is this is where it's at. Um, and then yeah, I mean I love mechanical keyboards. I've thankfully not bought more than a few, and that's just out of discipline. Um, but I would say that like this is the kind of thing that if you really care about, like I want the super custom thing, and I want to spend all weekend looking at um options. This is like a great place to start, and you can get really beautiful stuff for not that cheap. Keycaps might cost 50 to $100, and that's a great way of like making it look like a brand new thing, um yeah, I think that's it. That's all I have. I'm happy to take some questions. This is not slide 8, by the way. This is the best presentation I've ever seen you do. I've learned so much. um well, thanks. I just really like keyboards. Okay, y'all, I don't really have anything else to talk about, so I appreciate everyone Why can I not hold at the same time as most of my keyboards? I don't know. I'll find. I'll look into that. Rebecca Black sponsorship when. Um, I've seen some of the sponsorships that mechanical keyboard companies do, and um, usually the people that pay for sponsorships are not like the people you really want to be getting um, keyboards from. Usually, like I've seen like Hippotech and other people be like, "Yeah, I got this keyboard, and this is a paid sponsorship." And like especially like on his TikTok, he's always reviewing them, and he's just like not as good. All right, y'all. I need to finish my pasta and go hang out with my cats and my partner. So I appreciate everyone hanging out and doing this brain dump. Um, hopefully we'll see each other soon on the internet, and I will talk to you soon. Bye. 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 Bye.